In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up this really great budget with tracking capability. All right. It's going to automatically track all of your expenses and bring them in and give you summaries. It's going to tell you which categories you're overspending in using visual aids, and you'll be able to use tracking on charts as well to see how you're going category by category. You can also automatically allocate keywords to your transactions so that they're coming through automatically. You can still override them if you want to. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to see exactly where your money is going month by month so that you can plan better for your future. All right, we've got a brand new spreadsheet. Let's give it a name. Let's call it budget tracking. First thing we want to do in our first sheet is to put in some headers. So budget, and we're going to have some groups. And within those groups, we're going to have categories. We'll have some items that are tracked. We'll have the amount that we're budgeting for and the frequency. We'll also have the ability to convert it to monthly or to annual. And let's go ahead and just double click on here and rename this as budget. So what I like to do is to have the total come in at the top, and then straight away we're going to have the income group. Now the total and the income become headings, and under here in my categories is where I can put salary, side hustle. Keeping it very simple, you might have some other form of income in there, maybe some stocks or bonds or something. Okay, now let's go down to make another group, and we'll call this one expenses. Again, this can be a heading, and I'll show you why. And for expenses, let's put in things that we spend regular money on. So it could be clothing, entertainment, gifts, groceries, health, holidays, transport could be a big one. And now a new group, saving. Now let's put in a new group here for bills. So this could be paying the mortgage, insurance, communications. Let's put in utilities as well. Let's get a few things established. I'm going to pretty it up a little bit with the view, and we're going to turn off the grid lines. I'm going to freeze up to row 2. That way I've always got my headers there. Let's give it a little bit of color as well. Okay. Let's go with something from purple maybe. Oh, a bit too dark. Great. Total, let's go with, say, maybe like a yellow. Income, let's stick with green. I always like to leave an extra row just to make it easier to add data later if I want to. Expenses, let's go with something in the red. Savings can be blue. Bills. You know what? I think I'm going to swap out bills and savings. So I'm just going to insert 5 rows here. And let's copy and paste what we've got here. I'm going to press Control X and then Control V in this cell. Let's make this another category, maybe like an orangey category. Cool. So straight away there, using a lot of pastels, we've got, let's take the edge off this one. I might just go one darker shade. It's in the red category. Okay, at least expenses are a little bit more fun and bills are a bit more severe. Okay, great. So we've got our total, we've got our income, we've got our expenses, our bills, our savings. It's looking really good. What I want to do down here is I want to have this as grey because this will be calculations. Okay, let's just stick with this area. And I've gone quite a light grey there. I might make it just one darker, just so it's really obvious. Now the amount. Salary. Let's get paid $3,000 every fortnight. Fortnightly. Right, now what I want to do with the frequency is I want to set up another sheet. Let's press plus, and we'll call this one lists. And what we're going to do right here is give it a title, data validation lists. And we'll put in a heading here, frequency. Under frequency, we want to do weekly, fortnightly, monthly, annually. Let's make this bold. Okay, I'm going to select all these. So select these cells, and then I'm going to go up into data and named ranges. What I'm going to call this is lists, so we know that's where it comes from, and frequency. And done. Great. Now when I go back into budget for all of these, I can say frequency. I go up into data and data validation. Add a rule. Everything there in that range, I can say drop down from a range, and we'll call it lists frequency. Done. Now when I select it, I've got all these selections. Now the only thing with this is you might like it like this. Some people do. I prefer the old look, which is in advanced options. So click on advanced options. Is it going to let me down, scroll down, and just the arrow there. So now for my salary, I can say 3,000 a fortnight. Okay, the other thing I want to do here is to add the frequency per year. So we've got obviously 52 weeks, 26 fortnights, 12 months, and 4 quarters, and 1 for the annually. And we're going to use a formula here back in budget, which will help us to automatically determine what this budget is on an annual basis. Okay, so that's why these cells are grayed out, because we want formulas in here. First, we're going to work out a lookup to match the fortnightly with the number 26 from this table. And then we're going to use that to calculate annually how much the salary is. And then we'll reverse that, reverse engineer by dividing by 12 and work out the monthly salary. I'm going to start by putting if error, and that enables me to copy down without getting errors showing. So then we're going to use the index command, and back into our lists, we're actually, by putting the exclamation, we're referring to our lists sheet down here. We're going to use the range that we just came up with, which I will double check. The dollar signs are anchoring our range so that when we move this around to the other cells, that it will always stay in this range. So we have B4 through to B8. Okay, it's going to find a match. So it will return an item from that range when a match is found from E5. That's our cell right here, which says fortnightly. And going back into lists, when it finds frequency on the left-hand column, which is the A column, within that range of A to A4 to A8, it will then look up what the number is in the adjacent column B, and it will return that to us. Okay, if that matches, well, it will match. It'll have to be one of those frequencies. It's going to then multiply the returned value by D5. I need to put an equal sign here. By D5. So if that all equals 0, then we're just going to let it be blank. If not, then we want to let that value be what it is. So this is just a way to weed out any zeros, and it also weeds out any errors. Okay, there's a problem. What is the problem? Okay, the problem is that I needed another index command here. And let's try that. Great. So now if I change this to weekly, it's multiplied this number by 52. If I change it to annually, it's multiplied it by 1. That's because it looks up this frequency in the table here and it returns the number that's adjacent to it. In this case, fortnightly, which is what we want, which is 26. Now, if I have moved this down, say to all of them, it should be blank. Yep. It is blank. Now, if I put some numbers in here, say 1,000 and monthly, there we go, 12,000. So it is definitely working. Why don't we wind this back and say 250 a month, and other, we might say 100 a month. Okay, the other thing I want to do here is to take these values and divide them by 12. Oh, look at that. Isn't Sheets wonderful? You can click yes and it'll just copy them down for you. I actually want to see both annual and monthly. I find them both valuable for different reasons. So you could, in theory, you could set this up for weekly or fortnightly. You could put another column in here, insert, and just divide the annual total by whatever the frequency is that you desire. Personally, I budget on a monthly basis, but I like to see the annual budget as well. Okay, let's keep going with some numbers and see what we come up with. So let's say, let's make this 200 a month. Yeah, yours will obviously be different. That's fine. I'm just putting numbers in just for the sake of it. Monthly gifts. All of this is monthly so far. Groceries, let's go 400 weekly. Health, maybe this is, I don't know, quarterly, 500. Holidays, let's have an annual budget. Man, let's live it up, 5,000. Transport, 500 per month. And work-related expenses, maybe this is 100 a month. I've got a lot of monthly expenses. Okay, let's copy this down again. Copy. At the moment, I'm just, let's try that 0, 0. I don't really like the look of that last 0 there, so I'm just going to delete it manually. Now, I could make this a little bit fancier, I suppose, and have some more if statements and other ways to reduce all those formulas to 0, but I'm going to be adding some sums up here, so I'll just leave it. Okay, what I did there was just decrease the decimal places. There's no point looking at cents, but let's keep going with this. So our mortgage repayments, 1,600 a month. Insurances, we've got a lot of insurances. Let's go 700 a month. That covers health, that covers car, that covers home and contents, etc. Communications. Yeah, this is both our home, our internet at home, as well as our mobiles. So it's expensive in Australia. Let's go per month, utilities. And this is everything. This could be land tax wherever you are, or council rates or whatever, plus energy and water and sewage and so on. So again, not very cheap. Savings. Let's just put some numbers in here for now. But, whoops. I think we might come back to this one. 200. Let's go 400. Monthly. Great. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some totals, but I'm going to use the subtotal command, and I'll explain why. So subtotal, and we want to go G5 to G7. So let's just do that, G5 to G7. Yeah, we need to put the prefix of 9. Okay, so apparently what that does is it just looks like it's summing with the subtotal, but it'll only do the visible cells when it does its sums. So that's the one I usually use, and it seems to work for the purposes that we need it to. Let's just use the same formula here. It's the subtotal that's doing the heavy lifting. And in fact, I'm going to make this bold. I might even just make everything at the top here bold, my headings, and these two are effectively headings as well. Let's keep going with this. Let's put another subtotal here. All right, the thing I was going to do, which I forgot, is just to include the cell below it. This enables us to just add in additional information later on if we want to. And I'll do the same with this subtotal here. We'll just go down to 8. Right, let's make these guys bold as well. Control B and Control B, just making everything bold. Let's add another subtotal. What do we got there? G20. It doesn't give me enough room, so I'm doing it manually. And 20. All right, let's make it 23. I'm actually going to add an additional row below. It's still 23, so we'll change it to 24. And let's control. Copy all of those, delete the ones I'm not using. Make that bold again. Subtotal. And we got G26 to 28. I'll make that 29. G29. And bold. Okay. All right, now here's our total. So it depends on how you set up your expenses and your tracking and so on. You might end up with these totals being negative, in which case you can run another subtotal over the entire subset here. I don't mind actually keeping the numbers positive. And what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to manually put in these headers. Okay, so we've got G4 minus G9, which is expenses, minus G19, which is bills, minus G25, which is savings. And we're going to copy and paste that. And you can see straight away, we've blown a hole in our budget. We are not earning enough to cover our expenses. Okay, so what can we do? Well, we do have some discretionary spend in here. We could tighten up on the holidays, perhaps. And we got some discretion over our savings. So I'm actually going to wind this back a little bit. I'm going to say that investing is important, so I'll keep that. But my short-term savings, I'll reduce to, say, $2,000 a year. I quite like the idea of having $5,000 a year tucked away for long-term savings. So I'm going to find some more fat elsewhere. Or do I want to do that to the holiday? Oh, for the next few years, we're reducing the holidays. We're also cutting back a little bit on clothing. And what else can we do? We're going to refinance. We're going to get a lower rate on our mortgage, which is going to be super helpful. And all of a sudden, we're almost back to zero. So maybe there's some discretionary stuff here under entertainment. I think eating out we'll just assume is part of entertainment. Do I want to do that? No, let's put our own category in. So I think I'll be safe if let's just say I add something in here and copy these cells down. Let's go with eating out. 50 a month. All right, I've made my budget worse. Okay. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to invest slightly less. How are we going at the top here? You know what would be really cool? Why don't we move this frozen row down one to row 3? That way we can always see our total at the top there. So 200, that's the budget that we're trying to balance. I mean, over a whole year, are you really going to worry about that? Yeah, let's get it right. Let's get it right. Long term, what do we want? 375. Great. Some people would want that to be 0. I think we can live with that. Now, what I'm going to do is to just do a little bit of formatting. Let's bring these in a bit. In fact, why don't we make the whole lot, say 9 points. In fact, I'm going to be crazy and go 8. Let's do that again. 8. Now, this might seem a bit crazy for now, but I think it will help us later. There's our amount. Let's make all of that right-hand side. There's our frequency. Let's go to the right as well. Monthly and annual. I've selected it all, so let's go up a little bit. Just a little bit. Right. Yeah, okay. Now I can see it all on the one screen. You might be happy with that. You might, if you're not worried about tracking expenses, you can stop right here. You've got a budget and you can be happy with that. However, I think the real power of budgeting comes when you do track expenses over time. And to do that, we're going to need to capture transactions. So let's make another tab down the bottom here. Transactions. Oops. What did I do? I need to change that back to lists. Transactions. Lists we can just keep out to the right here because it's not super important. For transactions, we need a date of the transaction. We need a value, a description. I'm going to add an account because I might have more than one bank account that I'm tracking. I'm also going to add some calculated cells, and they're going to be month, auto, category. I'm going to have a manual cell here called category override, and then let's just call it final category. And I'll explain what this does. And the final one, let's just add another one here for any comments that we might have. Now, if you're on top of your spending, you can just add these manually. You could say that on a certain date, let's call it the 1st of January, 2025, we spent $100 on shoes, and the account was our Visa debit account. And I've got some formulas here that I want to add. Let's go with this grey color for month and for auto category. So this is just my technique. Anytime I want to have some formulas, I just want to grey the cells out so that it's obvious to me that they're formulas. Okay, let's have a look at what we need to do in here. This is just a quick little formula that will convert a date to a month. So what we need here is we want it to equal whatever the text is in our cell back here with the date, which is A2. And we want to spit out the format of 3Ms, January. Great. Now if we copy this down, okay. Yeah, right. Because there's no value there, it's just returning December. So we could add an if statement here. If, for example, A2 is blank, then let's keep it blank. If not, then we'll run the text command and convert it. So now if I pull this down, we see here it's cooperating. I want us to create another tab called Keywords. Keywords. Now in this tab, what we want to do is we want to have keywords, tracking, category, and duplicate. So the keyword is the word that we're searching for back in our transaction description. In this case, there's only one word, it would be shoes. And the category we can apply back to whatever category we think fits. So in this case, it would be clothing. And the duplicate just will come up with a little warning if it finds the same keyword. Now, this might seem a bit redundant, but you might end up with 100 keywords or 200 keywords, and you might have forgotten that you've already used one. And so if you add one, then the duplicate will check and flag it as an error. All right, so how's this going to work? Let's go back into transactions. We have a transaction of $100 for shoes using the Visa debit card in January of this year. We want the auto category function to tell us that that is in clothing as our category. Then we want the ability to override it. Finally, we want to know what the final category is. The final category might be whatever the original auto category is, but it might also be superseded by the category override. Back into keywords here, we're going to add the item shoes. That's our keyword. In our tracking category, we're wanting to do clothing, but I want to do a drop down here. Our duplicate, we can't actually put that in until we get more than one item. So we have to start that down here. So we'll do that later. Let's go back to our budget. Now, what I want to do here is to automatically populate a list of categories that we want to track. We might not want to track any of our income. On the other hand, we might want to track all of it. What's more typical is usually you want to track all of your expenses. With bills, it's perhaps less important because these are like fixed expenses. We can't do a whole lot to change what these values are, but we do have some control over how we spend in these expense categories. Maybe you want to change this to spending, for example, rather than expenses. In fact, yeah, let's just do that. Maybe that will help us. What I might do here is actually add another row and let's give this another color. We'll see what that looks like. Feel free to choose whatever colors you want. And the reason I did that is it's probably easier just to sum these three categories, so spending, bills, and savings, and they're all lumped into expenses. They're outgoings effectively. So you want to do income minus expenses to get your total for budgeting purposes. So let's have a look at this and go sum G10 plus, what have we got here? G21 plus G27. All right. And can I just divide by 12 again? Yes, I can. We could simplify this by saying G4 minus G9. It's going to give us the same answer. Let's simplify it. And again, we could have just used divided by 12 and it will do the same thing. Why don't we say that we want to track our expenses and The category of spending, we want to track it as well. We just want to see what our total spend is. So let's just say yes, 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 yes. We want to track all of those things. What I want to introduce now is a column that we can hide, and this column we will call tracked. It will also be a calculated column, and we can include, if we want to, these group headings as well as categories, because the group headings are going to have numbers associated with them as well. Let's do an if statement. So if our value over here, if C4 equals yes, which indicates that it is tracked, then we go to a secondary if statement that if A4 is not empty, then we want to return the value A4. Otherwise, we want to return B4 and then close brackets, comma, double parentheses. Now what that is saying is it's two if statements together. We want to track the income, then, or if A4 isn't empty, which it isn't, then we want to track that. Okay, that's why it's chosen income. If it is empty, then by default, we want to pick up the other name. So we know that it wants to track something. It's either tracking this group or the category. So it's very important that the categories and groups are separated by at least one row. And at the end of all that, it'll return an empty value if none of those conditions are met. And let's bring these down all the way to the bottom. I'm not sure that they need to be bold, so we might just turn all that off. Now what this has done for us is it's created a list which we can then use in our tracked category, and we're going to make a category in lists. Before we do that, there's one more thing I want us to do. Right down the bottom, I want us to add another category called special. Now this is something that we'll never track, but what it allows us to do is to add categories for budgeting purposes for things that are exempt, or in my case, some things are expense claims, which I get a refund for. There's no point tracking this sort of stuff. And I can allocate it to an expense claim category so that it's not cluttering up other categories. Also, I have a lot of internal transfers between different bank accounts, so I want to be able to capture them as transfers. So what we need to do is to bring the formula down for the tracked items. We don't need to have a budget for these items. It's just for the purposes of tracking. This will make more sense as we go. All right, so what are we going to do with this information? Well, in the lists, I want us to create two more named ranges. So keyword category, and we want tracking category. The first, we're going to use this command here, filter from our budget, and we're going to take it from our B column and all the way down to the end of the column because there's no number there. So B4 to the end of B, and then we're going to do budget $4 to B is not equal to nothing. So if there's a value, we want to filter it out. Now what this has just done is it's taken from B4, which is here, and all the way down to the end of all of the rows, it has grabbed all of these categories. That's because when we're looking at selecting keywords, we want to actually choose from all of these categories. Now the tracking category is what we've just created. These are special categories that we just want to report information on, and this will come in handy later on when we produce some charts. So this is the information here. This is column H. So really this is the same formula. We can copy and paste it. And, oh, see that? I should have had the $ in front of the B. Copy and paste. At the moment it's identical, but we know that it's not column B, it's column H. What this will do is to create a list of tracking categories for us. This will change if we take away what we want to track. For example, we don't want to track any income anymore. So if I come back over to the lists, there's no income. It just starts at spending. Right, I'm going to pull this down to for say 50. And I'm going to make a new named range. Let's call it lists, keywords. Let's do the same with the tracking categories. And again, just go down to 50. I don't think I'll ever want to have that many. Add a range, lists underscore tracking underscore categories. Done. Now we go back into keywords, and under the tracking category, I'm actually going to rename this because I think this could be really confusing. Let's just make this as simple as possible. Keyword category. And in here, we're going to do some data validation. We're going to add a rule and say that it's from a drop down from a range. And we go lists and keywords. Advanced. Yep, it's just found that whole list that we just made the name range for. We're going to put it as an arrow and we're done. Okay, so now I should be able to select the appropriate item, which is clothing. Let's make one more item. Let's say that on the 1st of February, I did a grocery shop and I shopped at a supermarket called Aldi. And it was my Visa debit. Now, because I'm in Australia, I want to change the details. So let's have a look in my settings, and it's set up by default as the United States. But this is going to do really strange things with my dates. So I want to change back to Australia, save and reload. And we want to change this to the 1st of the 2nd, and then it updates my date. Okay, if you're in the US, you want to leave it as it was before. You do dates differently to us. Okay, so you guys do like month, day, and year. We do day, month, and year. It's just something to get used to, but you got to change your settings if you want that functionality in Google Sheets to be behaving itself, okay? What we want to do for these auto categories is I actually want to do another name here, and this is Aldi. And I want to choose, so let's copy down this filter range. I want to choose supermarkets, or groceries rather. Where's groceries? There it is. This is where I can do my duplicates now. So we want to do an if statement, if count, if we have a $3, which is this guy here, to the rest of that column, and a 3 is greater than 1, then we want to say the word duplicate. If not, we just want to leave it blank. Okay, it's found an error there. I've put in a parentheses at the back here. I don't think it's needed. Yeah, I needed one in here actually. If there's more than one Aldi, basically, then it's going to say duplicate. I think I might copy this up. I think I will start there. Now, let's just test this out. So let's just go shoes. Shoes. Interesting. Let's get rid of that. A2. Let's try that. There we go. Because I needed it to start from the top to pick up the duplicate. But as it is, that's Aldi. And we're going to make this our formula. Let's copy a whole bunch of this down until, well, I can't see us having more than 200 categories, so let's just do 200. All right, so in keywords, what we want to do is to create some named ranges of both this column and this column. So to do that, let's go into data, named ranges, and we want to add, let's call it KW for keywords, not to be confused with our list keywords. And we want that to be from, let's see, A2 to the end of the column. So that's just A with no number. And we want to add another range, which is KW category. And we want this to be, say, B2 to the end, and done. Now we come back into transactions, and this is where we're going to put our auto category formula. First, I'm going to make these 8 as well. I can see us having quite a bit of information here. Now we're going to wrap this formula in an error detector. So if there is an error, we just want it to return a blank value. And now what we're using is a combination of several formulas. We've got an array and we've got an index. So it's going to look up a match for keyword categories. That's what we just put into our named range from the keywords, from the keyword categories that we have been allocating to our list. And we're going to match if there's something in the text that actually matches our keyword. All right. So that's what this command is doing. It's searching now within the index of keywords that we have identified in the next sheet. And it's going to return a value automatically for the chosen category. All right, let's see if this works. Clothing, groceries, fantastic. Looks like it's working. Now we can test this. We can go back into keywords here and we can change this to shoes, entertainment. I love entertaining with a new pair of shoes. There we go. Let's go back, put it back to clothing. We want the ability to override auto categories. Sometimes auto categories aren't giving us exactly what we want, or we want a special exemption. So in this case for groceries, I'm going to say, I want to call it exempt actually. Now, first what we need to do, data validation, add a rule. And we want this to be from a range. And the category override is really all the keywords. So this is going back into our lists and keywords. Advanced options, and we're going to make it our arrow style. And let's copy this down here. Control C, Control V. I want to make this exempt, and I'm going to say that it's paid for by a generous friend. So maybe someone put some money into our bank account, and that means that when I'm tracking it later, it won't be picked up as groceries anymore because I've overridden it. So now we need to do our final category, and this should be fairly straightforward. So I'm going to make a little if statement here, equals if, say, the override is empty, then we take the first cell. If not, we take the override. All right. So what that does, it's pretty basic. If this is blank, it's going to check there's something in here. If there is, then it'll copy this over here. If there's nothing in here, then it just keeps it blank. So what I want to do now is copy these down, and I want to go quite a way down. You know, over the course of a year, you might have, oh, who knows, maybe 1,500, maybe even 2,000 transactions. And for the purposes of this, let's just go 700. 700, great. Right, something is not working. It's because I didn't have this blank. I just copied exempt down. Excellent. These were automatic, so let's make these grey as well. Now for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to bring in some additional data. So I've got a file that I can put a link to, and this file will have a number of transactions. I think it might have 500 transactions. So we're going to insert this information. All right, here I have a list of 500 random transactions generated by AI over the course of 12 months using Australian stores, and it has been tweaked by me. There were some really weird things in here, but it's usable now. So if you want a copy of this, you can click on the link and download it yourself. It's already in a spreadsheet format. Often this sort of information comes as a CSV file, which you will need to import. And you can do that by clicking File, Import. And this is this is how I did it. So this is a CSV file, and I went Insert, create a new spreadsheet. Let's just go create import data. So that's how you would do it. So pretty much any bank in the world now, you can export a CSV file, and then you can manipulate the data to how you want it. In my case, I think I had the transaction column over to the right and I've moved it across to the left to match my format. So I'm going to now go through and select all this data and copy and paste it into our budget spreadsheet. I'm going to actually delete the first two because they're just made up. And let's right click and paste values only. I'm going to say that these all come from Visa debit. Let's copy down, make sure that all of our cells are copied down at least as far as our data. Let's go back to our magic 700 or 750, whatever it was, 700. Now, education department wage. All right, so I think everything's accounted for. And just to show you the power of the category override again, let's go back here and say payment to eBay. Actually, that wasn't entertainment. I can look up my purchase history in eBay, and I know that was a gift because it was a Lego set. Now, this is all pretty cool. So we can actually already manipulate this data, and we could, for example, we could say, I'm interested in what I spent in January, and let's find January, there it is. And I'm interested in what I spent in my final category. Let's do eating out. And here we go. I could go to that column and down the bottom right, I can change this to sum. And we see there that in January we spent $245. The thing is, it'll take quite a while to understand our information if we're playing with these filters and looking at it in that way. And there is a better way. And what we want to do now is to come back into the budget, and we're going to start to set up a way to track all this information. Okay, let's just go out of here. Let's select all. Let's select all of these categories again. Back into the budget. Now I'm going to hide tracked. I know that it's doing its thing, so I don't really need to see it anymore. I'm going to right click on the column header and hide column. Now we're going to have a look at the actual spend, and all of this is going to be calculated. So let's put the months in, January, Feb. If I select these two cells and drag them, they should be clever enough to expand. Now I only want 1 year, so let's just go through to December. I also want to do a bit of a summary at the end, so we might just tighten that up. And let's have a look at what we can do. We want to have a look at our budget. So we're going to have something here called to date summary, and we want to have a total and a difference and an adjusted spend. This is just sort of a bonus thing. There we go. Now, all of this is calculations, so I'm going to do that little trick that I did before. Let's just make it all obviously calculations. Here we go. Did I do that one? Yep. Probably doesn't need to be these wide either. So if you select all these columns, you can just drag them back and we get something that's a lot easier to see. Now I can zoom out a little bit here, and this is my actual screen resolution, but if that's not good enough, I can always put in manually a zoom, and that looks pretty good. Let's come back to 100. I'm just going to zoom the browser, and yeah, right. Let's do a compromise. That looks fine. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to do some clever things, and really we're wanting this spreadsheet to automatically pick up all of the categories and to bring the information per month into these columns, and then we can make some charts out of them which will help us to visualize what's happening. Just doing a bit of formatting here, and why don't we... I should have done that first. Why don't we make these a little bit bigger? So to achieve this, let's go find a category. We're going to do a formula called sum ifs, So sum if is the singular version of this formula, which just has the one criteria. But the sum ifs allows you to sum if multiple criteria are satisfied. So we're going to look at our transactions tab. And the range that we want is, I think it's B2 through to the rest of B. Let's have a look at, we should be able to do this manually as well. So let's click on the tab here. And I chose B2, which is the value, yep, through to the rest of the column. And now we're going to choose the final category over here. So this is the one we're really interested in, which will be H2. So let's do something similar here. Transactions. Actually, no, I was going to show you, wasn't I? If we do that, you can see that it's pulled those references in. We want to just fix this reference and then go to the end. So the last one we want to do, J2. Right, so I'll come back. What I'm attempting to do here is to say sum if the amount is other. That should be 11, B11. Not applicable. Argument must be a range. I spelt the first one wrong. That's so let's have a look through some of these categories and see if it's working. Maybe I didn't spend any money on clothing. Okay, so what's happened here is all these values are coming in as negative because that's how the transactions are working. I want to make them positive, and the reason I want to do that is because I want to chart them. You might not want to do that. You might want to show them negative, and you might want to show just the totals as negatives. But I want to change them up. So how do I do that? I could potentially do that through the transactions themselves. I'm not sure I want to do that. I think it's good to have the transactions as both positive and negative for incoming and outgoing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just for all of the expenses, so all the outgoing sums, I'm just going to put a minus in front. We will drag that down. Why don't we just do them all at once? Okay, I'm going to drag these across. You can see here I'm being very manual, and what this means is that next time if I add a category, I'll have to make sure I copy and paste all the formulas appropriately. But it shouldn't be too hard to do. For example, if I want to add something in the bill category, I add, let's call this one rates. I know I included it in the other stuff, but just for the purposes of this illustration. And then you would have to get everything here, and you would have to copy it down. And if you wanted to track it, you would go and put a yes in there. And then we'd see in the transactions, in the lists rather, that you've got rates and it's ready to be tracked later on. Now I should be able to just copy these totals. Let's copy this guy. All right, something's a little bit odd through here. This subtotal, I think I had in there just 27. So I didn't have the right cell reference. There we go. Let's copy this across. Okay, for a little bit of work there, I've ended up with monthly totals, and you can see going across here that I'm in surplus some months. In June, I'm in a massive deficit, and August and October as well, and then a massive surplus in December. So this is a to-date summary, and what we want to do is we want to count the information all the way along here for the number of months where information is available. I skipped ahead to the finished product here, and what this formula is doing is it's going to give me the budget which corresponds to the amount of months of data that I've entered in my transactions. So for example, if in my totals it's telling me that I've only got data up till the end of June, then it'll only give me a budget to date of 6 months. If I've got data for the whole year, then it'll give me a budget to 12 months. This way I can compare the budget to date to my actual to date. Now, because I have a full 12 months, all the annual totals are matching the budget to date because I've got a full year of information. Let's just say that I didn't have any information for December. All right, so I'm going to just delete this just for this example. You can see how it's all adjusted itself as if there were 11 months. So now this is the budget to date. This is the budget over 11 months. I'll just undo that. The total to date is just going to be the sum of all of the months, all the actuals, and I can autofill. The difference is going to be the total minus the budget to date. So there's our difference. And yes, we can autofill. Maybe what we can do here is use accounting so that we can see straight away, financial rather, so we can see when things are negative. In fact, why don't we do this for all of our actuals? We'll change it all to financial. There we go. And I'm going to take these numbers back. We don't need to see any decimals. So being financial numbers, anything in parentheses is going to come out as a negative. And to be honest, all these expenses should be negatives, but I'm going to keep them positive just so that I can track in my charts. All right. I'm going to fix up the formatting here. Now, unfortunately, because this is made up data, it's showing quite a number of strange things. If we look across here in our categories, there's all sorts of variances. In one place, we really haven't spent much, or we haven't spent anything on clothing, apparently. I'm not sure what we're wearing. We've got here nothing on holidays. It's very sad. What it's telling us overall, though, is our total difference is about $5,000. It's also telling us that there's a lot of variability across these months. Now, you know, in the real world, I don't think the numbers would be as bad as what they are here, but it's really hard to kind of visualize what's going on. So something that I like to do just in my spending categories is to compare what's happening with the original budget compared to what's being spent. So for example, here, you look in January and we've got a monthly budget of $150. So clearly that's fine. On the other hand, with eating out every single month, except for August, we've gone, December as well, we've gone over our $50 budget. So what I'd like to do is to, and we can do it on the totals here as well, is to run some conditional formatting on these categories just to really quickly see with our discretionary spending whether we're going under or over. I want to select all of this stuff here. I'm not too worried about my total expenses. So let's just go with the spending category, the total of the spending plus all the individuals. And we want it to show like a red highlight. We go format, conditional formatting, and yes, that's our range. The custom formula is equals and okay, so what this is telling us is like all of these locations basically where you've got a spend greater than your budget, it's going to highlight. And let's go with something like this so it's easy to see. All right, now just say you're roughly halfway through the year, 6 months in, and you've overspent on a budget, but you haven't completed your annual budget. You might want to know what your adjusted spend would be for the months remaining. And you can do that. Let's put a formula in over here. This relies heavily on some if statements. So I've skipped ahead to the end of the formula. And what this formula does is it checks the remaining months left. So that's months with no data entered. And it divides up any remaining budget over those months. If you've already used up all of the budget, then it'll just come out as 0. Now my formula is in cell reference Z12, and I've already copied it across all the other categories. How this works, let's just assume we've got no information for the last 2 months. And so this will force it to say that it's really, we're up to the end of October. and it'll give us an adjusted spend. You can see here that our annual budget for clothing was $1,800, and up to the end of October we didn't spend anything. So it's telling us that for the rest of the year, for the remaining 2 months, we have $900 per month that we can spend. So perhaps I should call this adjusted monthly spend, would be more accurate. Right. Now we can make some of this stuff pop a little bit. So see how there is $0 there? Let's go back to conditional formatting, and we say here text is exactly, well, let's say is equal to 0. Then we want to show that as red. It's a little odd, doesn't it? I might just go back to no background, I think. By making those numbers red, it's just saying, actually, you've got no budget left. You've overspent. You've already done everything. I'm just going to put these back. Oh, there we go. It's dividing by 0 because we've closed out our final month. Let's give this an if error. If error, has that fixed it? Yes. Pull these down. Great. Now let's go back into our transactions, and we're going to clear this, and we're going to go to December. This is just an illustration of what would happen if you only had up to November. Let's just delete this data. We'll go back into our budget. As you can see, there's nothing in that month. And so it's giving us the budget remaining per month for 1 month. That's why you get the full $1,800 here. Now I'm going to go back into my transactions. There we go. December is back. Select all 12. Come back in here, and here we go. So that's just a little test to make sure that it's working, and it is. So let's do a chart, add a sheet. Here we go. Charts. Let's come back to our budget. So we're going to add a chart, and what we're going to do is unhide this, because this is where our tracked categories come in handy. Really, all I'm interested in seeing in this particular chart is my spending. This is the discretionary items that I have some degree of control over. I've selected the months at the top and the categories down, the tracked categories, I should say, down the side. So we go insert chart, and we need to change this to a 100% stacked bar chart. Now I want to change this again to standard. You can see here the categories are not quite how we want them. We want to flip them around, so we want to switch rows and columns. That's looking better. Do we want to use column H as headers? Does it make any difference? Yes, it has helped. Let's lose these top series that don't seem to do anything for us. Remove, 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 remove. Do I need spending? I don't think I do. I think it's just cluttering things up, because spending is just the total of all the other categories. So I'm going to remove that. Hey, that's actually looking quite useful now. There is a bit of something weird going on down here in September, so we might see if we can do something about that. Let's give it a title. Spending by category. Let's have a look at the horizontal axis. Minimum value of 0. And we got rid of that funny anomaly in September. This is quite useful now. So the way that it works is it's stacked from the left to the right, but it always follows the convention. So remember, we didn't spend anything in clothing. That's why we're not seeing any blue at the start here. Then we see red, which is eating out. And then we see yellow, which is entertainment. And then green, which is gifts, and so on, all the way to the end. I'm pretty happy with that for now, so let's copy that. In fact, let's Control X. And in charts, let's paste that Control V. If we go back to budget, we can delete this. This is our charts here. Great. Now I'm going to move this across. We'll call this our monthly budget tracker. Category and a drop down. Let's go to our data validation and we want to add a rule for that particular cell. We want to drop down from a range, and I believe it's list tracking categories. Yes, tracking categories done. Now I should be able to select any of these. What we want to do is we want to have cumulative month budget actual Feb December and then we want to have monthly. Same kind of deal. January, Feb. All right, let's just go back again. Make these nice and small. And we have all grey here. These are all formulas. So we need to add a formula down here using the index function. So I've skipped ahead to the end of the formula, and what it's doing here is it's looking up the category that we've selected at the top of charts, which in this case is eating out, and it's applying the budget for that category across all of the months. So when this is dragged down, it should just be $50 per month. The thing about this formula is when we change our category at the top, it should automatically adjust the budget. Let's copy this across. Now in this case, we want to have two match formulas, and what we're trying to do here is work out our actual spend. All right. Now there are probably other ways to do this. Maybe there's a way to hit the cell reference at the start of the year, like from January, and then do like a transpose call up. But this is the way I've chosen to do it. Now cumulative should be just a straightforward case, looking up the budget here. And now we have whatever's above us plus the second one, and this will be adding up throughout the year. So here we have the cumulative tracker, insert chart. I'm just going to change this to cumulative tracker. Now Google doesn't let you put in a formula for a chart title. You can kind of fudge it, like you can position a chart and then make it transparent and then get rid of the title and have a cell reference in the background change. But I think if we can see this cell reference, then we're okay. So that's our cumulative tracker. Let's just park that for the moment. Then we want to get our monthly tracker. So this will be a different type of chart. We want to do like a, let's call it a bar chart, or a column chart might be good. Try this one. So there's our baseline, there's our budget, and there's our actual spend in red. monthly tracker. Okay, let's just reposition these around to get something that we like. Maybe something like that. You can have a play with these charts. You don't have to make them exactly the same. Right, maybe you don't want to see all that on the bottom there. The other thing we can do with all of these is just to take the grid lines off. It just makes them nice and neat. Might leave them on here for transactions because it's easier to see what's going on. And yeah, I don't mind them with lists and so on, but I think for anything that we're looking at, like the budget and this sort of stuff here, charts, it's good to take them off. In fact, let's just lose the coloring at the top there as well. So we've got budget, actual, to-date summary. We could throw in another little row here for a gap, but I think that's all right. I'll just hide this off again. I suppose the other thing we could do is we could grab this and we could turn this into a group. So we group columns like so. Same with this guy. We could grab it and we could turn it into a group. Yep, so then we're just looking at our budget. It's nice and clean. We can open it up, look at the summary. We can look at the actual for the months and we can see at a glance what's going on here. We can also see the monthly adjusted spend. So close with this view. Let's go back to 100. Oh yeah, we can't see that because we're not at the end of the year yet. We could see it. If we were back in August or something, it would just work that out for us. And, you know, maybe you want to see that. So you just get rid of this so you can see it quickly. And that just tells you, you know, it's all just averages. What can you spend on average per month for the rest of the year to stick to your original budget? Okay. All right. Something else you could do if you wanted to just get rid of this is just move it all down out of sight. And then you can just have some clean looking charts here. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so in the end, what we've got is we've got our budget, we've got our actuals, we can work out the difference over the year. We can track our spending or our variable expenses. So something I've noticed is if we then come back and remove certain categories, what it does is it removes the titles from the chart, but the information is still there. I think that's just really because of the way we set the chart up from the information that we had at the time. So you could potentially tweak that by going into edit the chart and losing these items that aren't named anymore. And let's do that now. Remove, remove, remove. So that's cleaned it up. Unfortunately, that wasn't an automatic process. And now if I put them back in, what will it do? And I'll have to manually add them back in as well. So if I add series, I have to pick then, which ones am I missing? I'm missing health, holidays, home, health, holidays, home. Okay, so I'd have to go back in here, edit the chart, add series, health, add series, holidays, and add series, home. The other unfortunate thing it's done is it's just added them to the end. Let's see what we can do here. Let's remove all series. Add series. Okay. That's a bit painful, but it is possible to add them all back in. let's just say we're examining our budget. We're trying to track our spend and figure out areas where we can save. If we look at this at a glance, we see that gifts are off the chart. I mean, really, we spent $7,000 on gifts. So clearly, I probably needed another category for shopping where I could have allocated some of these automatic categories into a shopping category. If we look at the charts and we went to gifts, we could see, yep, we're way over in every month. We're way above our targeted spend. However, if we went to something else like health, for example, we can see, yeah, you know what? We're really close. We're just under budget, but we're really close to our budget. So then next year, we look at that and we'd say, yeah, we don't have to really do much. I hope you really like this budget tracking tool. And if you have any comments for me, please leave them and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible.